Assalamu alaikum, grade 10 computer science students. We will start with lesson number 12. This lesson is about interpreters and low level languages. Let's start. So, what is an interpreter? Interpreter is an English word, and you may have heard about interpreter when there is a foreign head of state visit another country, then they have interpreter, and we call it tarjuman in Urdu. Okay, so this is a programming language, and this is a example of a program in a high level language. And we discussed before compiler that will translate the whole program in one step. But interpreter is doing the same thing with a little difference. Interpreter is also a computer program like compiler that takes the code written in high-level language and translate it into machine code. The only difference is it will translate it instruction by instruction or line by line. So interpreter, like compiler, also translate a high-level language into machine code, but the difference is it translates it line by line or instruction by instruction. So to tell you more about interpreter, uh, let's suppose you have a foreigner, it's visiting your country, and you have interpreter. So it means, if it is interpreter, it means one sentence of one person will be translated before another sentence. In case of the compiler, so the compiler will translate the whole speech. Once the president or the prime minister deliver a speech, then the whole speech will be translated in one go into the other language. Then it's like compiler. But if the interpreter translate one sentence, translate it, and then take another sentence, and it's like an interpreter. Interpreter translate the source code into machine code, one line at a time. If there are errors, then the interpreter will not translate the next line. So first you need to remove the errors. It means that it's easier to find error because it's translating line by line, and if the line is not correct, so it will not translate. So it's easy to find the errors in this case. Each line of code can be checked for errors as each line of code is translated in turn. So if there are errors, you can easily find out the errors. Instead of reading the whole program, you will know which line have the errors. Interpreter takes less memory than compiler, and so the interpreter is lightweight. It takes less space of the memory because it's not translating the whole file together, but it's translating only one line at a time. So when you the original program that is written, that is called source code, and the translated program that is called machine code, or you can say running code, interpreter are slower than compiler in a sense that it will translate one program, one line, and then wait for the other line and then translate it. So compilers are faster, it takes less time, and interpreter takes more time to translate. Now we'll discuss the low level language. Before we have discussed high level language, and a high level language is a programming language that is easier for human to understand and that is difficult for computers to understand. But low level language is a language that is easier for the computer to understand and is difficult for human to understand. So the translated code or program is called object code. Machine code is very difficult to understand, but it can be represented in a slightly simpler fashion as assembly language. So low level language means the program that is entirely written in machine language, zeros and one, or maybe in case of the assembly language where few English words are used, so that it's slightly easier than the machine language. Machine language is purely in zeros and one, and it's very difficult to understand. But assembly language was introduced to make the machine language easier, and assembly language has some English words like you have add, sub for subtract, and uh, INP for input and OUT for output. So these words computer will not understand directly. For this you need a translator, and the translator that is used to convert assembly language into machine language is called assembler, and these words are called mnemonics. Low level languages are basically computers' native language. It means low level languages are easier for the computers to understand. Assembly language and machine code are both examples of low level languages. As I told you, machine code is only in zeros and one, and assembly language have some English words as well, like add, subtract, INP and out, and these words must be translated into machine language before the computer can understand it. And the translator program that is used to translate assembly language is called assembler. Machine code is directly executable by computer, yes, because it's in zeros and one, but assembly language must be translated, and the software that is used for it is called assembler. So what is an assembler? An assembler is a computer program that will take the instructions used in the assembly language and convert it into machine code, and then computer can process it. Assembly language was the first progression, means the first development that was made after machine language or machine code, because it was very hard to write and read. So to make it easier, then assembly language was the first development. Later on, many high-level languages were developed. So what exactly is the low-level languages and high-level language comparison? Low-level languages examples include machine code and assembly language. For high-level languages, you have C, Java, Python, Basic, Pascal, and many other languages. Low-level language is difficult for human to understand, but it's easier for the computer to understand. Machine and high-level languages are easier for human to understand, and it is difficult for computer to understand. For low-level languages, you need assemblers. If the program is written in assembly language, you need assembler to translate. And for high-level languages, you can use compiler or interpreter, depends on the programming language. And in low-level language, one line of code does one thing, okay, but in high-level languages, one line of code can do several things. You will learn it better when we will be writing programs in Python, and I'm waiting for all of you to be ready When all of you are ready with your computers or laptops, then we will start the programming language as well. A home task for you. What is an interpreter? What is an assembler? And what is the difference between compiler and interpreter? If you do not understand this, watch the video again and you will understand it clearly. Also, you can take help from your book. Uh, this concludes the lesson today. If you have any question, any query, you can send on WhatsApp. Thank you.